We are now live. Sound check. Grant subcommittee meeting for Monday, May 9th. Sound check.
Counselor.
Thank you very much, everybody. Good morning. Quorum is present. I see Councillors Vanderbeek, Councillor Nan, Councillor Ferguson, and Councillor Jackson and myself. We are here. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. As a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings, and members are reminded of a 5-minute time rule, which will be adhered to during this meeting. Members can submit another request to speak if they require additional time to ask questions or make comments. I'm trying to hide my phone as we speak. Don't hear it. Okay, Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Madam Chair, no, there are none.
Thank you. So it's been moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Jackson, that we approve the agenda as printed. Any objections, any comments? Seeing none. Thank you. Please vote accordingly. While the voting's in progress, thank you. It is up and it is unanimous. Members of the committee, are there any declarations of interest? I'll wait to see if you're waving. I don't see anybody waving. So number 3, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of January the 17th, 2022. It's been moved by Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek, that we approve as printed. Are there any discussion on the minutes? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Johnson. Just on page 4 of 4 of our last meeting back on January 17th of this year, a discussion item. I'll just quickly read it, that up to $500,000 of the City Enrichment Reserve funds be earmarked to investigate potential matching opportunities throughout the city to bring a total fund of $1 million in support for communities and organizations heavily impacted by COVID-19. Maybe throughout the staff report, staff presentation, Chair Johnson, that staff will touch upon or reference what committee had approved by a 4-0 vote back on January 17th. I didn't see it looking through on the staff presentation, looking at report 6.1 as well. I didn't see reference to it, but I'm sure staff are already ahead of me. But just in case, I didn't want to lose track of that important item of the reserves and of the COVID hardship as well. Thank you, Chair Johnson.
Thank you, and the staff have been notified. Appreciate that. So the minutes are have been moved and seconded. Please vote accordingly.
Councillor Vanderbeek, are you able to vote? Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Clerk, I forgot to push submit.
It's okay.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So 5.1 is staff presentations. This is the big meeting where we look at all the grants that have been allotted and recommended. And after the staff are finished with this the presentation, we will be going through Appendix A, and we will be doing it page by page as we always have been doing. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. So 5.1 is the 2022 City Enrichment Funding Recommendations, GRA 22002 citywide. Morgan Stahl, the Director of Government Relations and Community Engagement, will introduce the presentation for 5.1, and Mimi John, Grants and Strategic Partnerships Coordinator, will provide the balance of that presentation. So I'm going to look at, I see Morgan's popped on, and I heard Mimi earlier. I think she is here. There you are. So Mimi is sharing the presentation. So go ahead, ladies, you're on.
Good morning. I'm Morgan Stahl, the Director of Government Relations and Community Engagement. I'll be sharing some brief remarks just to give a bit of an overview of where we're at with the City Enrichment Fund for 2022, and then Mimi will be leading us through the presentation. So good morning, members of council and the viewing public for the Subgrants Committee members meeting. I'm joined this morning by my colleagues in the Government Relations and Community Engagement Department, in the City Manager's manager's office, as well as our team of program managers who work across the city in different departments overseeing the program areas. I'm also joined by Monique Garwood, who provides financial leadership to the fund, and Mimi John, who is our fantastic City Enrichment Fund grants coordinator. She oversees all logistics in the rollout of the fund. You will hear shortly from the majority of these folks, and my brief remarks will be followed again by a presentation from Mimi that outlines the staff recommendations for the 2021-2022 City Enrichment Fund. Over the last 2 years, as a result of COVID-19 and the ongoing health crisis, programming delivered by our grants recipients have been severely impacted, and the City Enrichment Fund has experienced unprecedented challenges. In both years, a phased approach was adopted in order to assist and adapt community needs with funding as per the approved guidelines and grant mandate. In addition, we have also been faced with some significant internal challenges as staff redeployments and the need to adapt organizationally to meet these needs. Our greatest priority throughout all of this was ensuring that applicants had access to funds in a timely manner and that they were receiving ongoing support from city staff. I would also like to acknowledge where we were at from a public health perspective during the City Enrichment Fund intake period from September 1st to November 1st. In August 2021, the Ontario government had put its plan to lift all remaining public health restrictions on hold as its top health officials warns of a difficult fall and winter ahead. In September 2021, we saw required proof of vaccination, masking in selected settings. In the latter half of September, we saw Dr. Kieran Moore, the province's chief medical officer, has announced some capacity limits. We're expanding for outdoor events and small indoor gatherings. There was also an announcement in September that there would be increasing limits starting the latter half of September, and that would apply to event spaces, concerts, theaters, and cinemas. In the latter half of October, we saw Ontario release a plan to safely reopen in order to manage COVID-19. I say all of this because this is when applicants were applying for their funds that Council is now making a decision about today. And so providing this context, I believe, is helpful to understand where perhaps some applicants were at in that September 1st to November 1st timeline. For 2022, the City Enrichment Fund, as the city slowly introduces and resumes regular programming in an effort to provide applicants with consistency, fairness, and equitable processes across all program areas, the recommendations are aligned to the last regular pre-pandemic funding year. As a team, we're referring to this granting cycle as a transitionary period, and it will be treated as one-time funding. We have evolved from the phased approach that we adopted in both 2020 and 2021 and are beginning to adapt as large gatherings, festivals, and events start to reopen and occur. For the viewing public and those not familiar, the City Enrichment Fund is the overall name for the city's municipal investment in a wide range of program areas that support the city's strategic plan. The fund comprises of 6 program areas: agriculture, arts, communities, culture and heritage, community services, environment, sports and active lifestyle, with funding streams and categories. Applicants must both consult the general guidelines and the program-specific handbooks in order to ensure all eligibility criteria are met. Each year, the application intake period is open from September 1st to November 1st. This year, staff consulted with many organizations throughout the intake period to help guide and support application submission. Staff also held 11 community-based workshops in the intake period in order to provide applicants support and guidance. In an effort to reach more applicants, our staff also recorded these workshops and made them available through the city website. Our grant handbook and session presentations were also made available through the City of Hamilton website. We will continue to host these sessions in incoming intake periods so that the fund moves toward a standardization and we continue to streamline our processes. Our ultimate goal is to reach more organizations and community-based programming in order to ensure that our applicants have support that they need for their program, application questions, budget, troubleshooting, and access to our online portal. This year, we introduced a new online platform for applicants, SurveyMonkey Apply. Applicants could also visit the video walkthrough posted on the City Enrichment Fund webpage at their leisure. Workshop sessions were provided virtually to answer questions on program area streams, eligibility, goals, application process, and budget. These changes continue to strengthen and empower community organizations in order to provide further capacity building to our applicants. Through the use of advertising and social media, there was a greater effort in 2021 to get the word out in order to reach more applicants and to engage the community in workshops, in addition to one-on-one meetings. Staff worked with organizations to identify gaps and needs of the program area to provide guidance and develop and implement a funding model. In 2022, funding recommendation was contingent upon funds remaining in the program envelope. During the 2022 budget process, Council approved a total budget for the City Enrichment Fund of $6,088,340. The City Enrichment Fund budget allocation, as presented in the recommended supplementary documents that were provided to Council, recommends funding allocation within the approved amount. As in past years, adjudication committees met to review and rate all applications with a grading system. Members of Council will notice staff have used a grading system of A, B, C, and D. This is an enhancement from previous years. In years past, the rating scale was a number. We have adapted our grading system in order to ensure that our granting processes are in line with other municipalities and large funders. We are also preserving the confidentiality of the applicant by showing a letter grade of A, B, C, or D. The result of the reviews and resulting recommendation allocations are outlined in Appendices A and B to report GRA 22002 as attached. Lastly, I want to acknowledge the leadership of Councillor Brenda Johnson as the chair of the Subgrants Committee. As stated earlier, COVID-19 and the pandemic more broadly created significant challenges for the organization and the fund overall. Councillor Johnson, working with both Mimi John and Monique Garwood, was committed to ensuring our organizations had access to funds and worked diligently with staff, and our grant recipients were always top of mind in our decision making. We appreciate her ongoing support and look forward to continuing to work together as we implement the 2022 funding rationale. I'll now turn it over to Mimi John, who will guide us through the presentation.
Thank you, Morgan. Through the chair, good morning, chair and members of the grants subcommittee. The following are the respective program managers who worked with our community groups, City Enrichment Fund stakeholders, and past recipients for this cycle, overseeing the arts and CCH area, which is the community's culture and heritage area. It's Andrea Carvello and Deidre Rosema. Agriculture, Tyson McMahon. Environment, Whitney Slattery. Community Services, Carmen Bien. And Sports and Active Lifestyles was overseen by Deborah Maudsley. They are present here on this call to answer any specific questions to their program area. The coordination and administration team is myself and Monique Garwood. And the City Enrichment Fund portfolio falls under Government Relations and Community Engagement Department. That's led by Morgan Stahl, who you just heard from. Our approved City Enrichment Fund budget for 2022 is $6,088,340. The following is the breakdown of the overall fund in terms of the program envelopes dedicated to each area. Funding recommendations are contingent upon funds remaining in the program envelopes. Over the past year, we have a few highlights of many. The fund has been very, very busy this year. This year, we implemented, as Morgan said, a new online platform to further develop the fund, streamline processes for consistency, transparency, and efficiency, both for our community partners, community groups, as well as for internal staff. We continue to evaluate the fund's processes and documents, support tools, as can be seen with our reports back to council, particularly with EDI implementing data capturing in our CEF application for next year, and research that we've done over this past year with other granting bodies and other municipalities. Our funding rationale this year sees the fund returning to pre-pandemic levels to even the playing field during the past few years of instability and inconsistency in community programming. Applying a consistent rationale in the past few years allowed for surpluses in certain areas. We saw COVID severely impacting, even canceling events and programming. Staff recognized the need to provide a level of flexibility over the past 2 years, and at that time and within the grant's mandate, to understand the status of each applicant and adopt a phased approach, as Morgan specified, around the original funding recommendations. We saw many programs either not being able to use their grant funds or taking a reduced amount or returning it all together. We witnessed that even for this cycle. Community groups are still reeling from the past 2 years. As we transition back to regular programming, it made sense to go back to pre-pandemic levels. That being pre-pandemic levels being 2019. This year, as part of our process improvement, you will see category ratings, which are category A for recommended scores between 80 to 100. Category B indicates scores for 60 to 79. C are funds recommended but pending submission of additional information prior to the release of funds, and D indicates a failing score. This is to protect the privacy of applicants, as well as in line with other municipalities and large funders. I want to stress that, like every year, applicants still have complete access to their ratings and can follow up with program managers to understand why their application scored the way they did. This practice has not changed from previous years. It still remains the same. It's just the added privacy protection publicly for our applicants. For the next application period, for the public who's watching or who will watch this later as well, and for the committee, as every year, our application intake period has not changed. It runs from the first week of September to the first week of November. For additional information, please visit the City Enrichment Fund webpage, which contains important dates, general guidelines, program area handbooks, and past results and reports. Lastly, and greatly so, I would like to recognize and thank our City Enrichment Fund team and community partners for their collaboration and communication to complete another City Enrichment Fund, will almost complete another City Enrichment Fund grant cycle to further enrich our developing City of Hamilton. Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi and Morgan. I think everybody can agree that the jobs that the staff do for the City Enrichment Fund are challenging. They meet with the applicants one-on-one to help them through all their applications, but it's been extremely difficult during COVID when you can't meet one-on-one, and going over applications over the phone or Zooming is a little bit more difficult. So thank you to the staff for all their work that they have done. So on the report, first off, are there any questions to staff on the presentation before we go into the report? Okay, we got Councillor Ferguson and then Councillor Nan. Unless, wait a minute, let me go to chat. Sorry, people have been putting their names in. Sorry, Councillor Nan, then Councillor Ferguson. My apologies. Go ahead, Councillor Nan.
No worries, Chair Johnson. Thank you so much. And thank you also to staff for the presentation and overview. I appreciate the changes that have gone in and that were described in terms of the grading program and system. And also wanted to share the feedback that I had from a number of applicants in terms of being able to access and meet with staff and get clear about how to apply successfully while also getting some feedback from previous years as well. I can see some of those changes in the details of the appendices in terms of how some of those smaller organizations and individuals have shifted their application process to become more in alignment with our application and therefore become successful candidates, whereas previously they may not have been. Chair, the questions I have are into the details around the allocation. So mainly it was comments on the presentation. Do you want me to hold in regards to questions for allocations?
If the questions are specific to certain organizations, you might want to wait till Appendix A is discussed because we are going to be going through this page by page.
Okay.
If it's a generic question overall from the presentation, please feel free. Go ahead.
One generic question then, thank you. For those organizations that received a C or D grade through you, Mimi, you mentioned that staff are always available for the applicants who may have graded lower. And can you just go over what that process looks like? What are we encouraging those applicants who did not succeed in recommendations this year from the capacity building perspective, right? That deep work that you all have been doing through this pandemic of helping organizations strengthen their applications, specifically thinking about those organizations that fall under the EDI categories. What's the plan?
Thank you, Mimi.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Nan, for that question. It would be calling up the program managers or contacting me at grant.coordinator@hamilton.ca to set up a meeting. What happens at that time is we would go over your rating. Program managers would meet with applicants or recipients and talk through what adjudicators found, what was missing maybe in their application. Oftentimes, I've been in meetings where the applicant thought they submitted a really good, strong application and didn't realize certain aspects were missing because the adjudicators don't know them, they're not seeing them, they're just seeing what's on the paper. So it's really encouraging them to reach out to the program managers to understand how they were graded and what perhaps was missing or what could be added to improve their scores for the next year. It's always also something to note. I've always noticed it depends on the year. It depends on what applications come through. So sometimes you might think that, yes, I submitted this application last year, but this year it didn't hit the same. Well, that's because there could be a change in the quality of applications. You have more applications in your program area. There's a lot of different factors and complexities going into looking at the application and grading them as such. So kindly reach out to your program managers or to me, and we can work with you.
Thank you. Thank you for the response. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson. I think you're muted, sir. There you go. Oh, you're muted again. There you go.
Yeah, the button's telling me something different than the screen is. And what was the reserve at the beginning of the this process, and what will the reserve be at the conclusion of it, based on your recommendations?
Is Monique available for that question? Monique, are you on? There you are. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Through the chair to the councillor, at the start of so our recommendations did not include any of the funding from the reserve. Our reserve balance at the start now is $1,354,593. $500,000 of that is reserved for, was earmarked for the COVID-19 relief grants that are coming, I guess, in the future. And so our available balance is $854,593 in the reserve.
And second question is, it looks like most of the applications, I've skimmed through it. Unfortunately, I went online the weekend twice to take a look at this report and I couldn't see it, but I got it now, which is fine. And it looks like most people are just getting the same as the previous year if they qualified. There was no provisions for an inflationary increase at all in 2022.
Thank you. We can go, I think, is Monique, are you prepared for that, or is it Mimi that's going to answer that?
I can attempt and Mimi can
Okay.
support if needed.
Go ahead.
The chair to the counselor. So our recommendations for 2022, unfortunately, did not include any increases. We tried to keep it at the 2019 level for most applicants in order to provide funding for new applications.
Okay, that's fine. And lastly, the $500,000 for the COVID-19 relief. We did put another $15 million into the COVID reserve from our year-end surpluses from 2021. And council did approve $500,000 to be set aside, primarily because they wanted to use the application process that we're going through today. In light of the fact that we now have probably, I'm going to go by memory, $35 million in that COVID reserve, do you still think they'll need this $500,000 from us, or is that unclear yet?
Monique or Grace Mader was the one that spearheaded this, so I don't know which staff member wants to tackle that one. Oh, Morgan, thank you.
Yeah, through the chair to the counselor, perhaps I can build on some of Monique's comments, and I've been in contact with GM Mader as well. I think the challenge that we're facing with that 500,000 is, as staff, we were directed to find matching dollars for that 500,000, and we've been having a number of conversations internally and externally about where potentially we could find another 500,000 for matching, but we haven't identified a source for matching funds. So we know that there is still a desperate need in the social service sector and through many of those community organizations that were doing frontline service on the ground. However, we haven't identified another 500,000 internally or externally to match those dollars. So I would perhaps recommend, or I guess we're thinking about treating that as a separate issue outside of the funding rationale that we're speaking about today. But I know that as staff, we were directed to find 500,000 either throughout the corporation or externally, and we haven't yet identified that. So that's why members of council will not see anything regarding that potential 500,000, 1 million that we originally chatted about when Grace was present at the last subgrants committee meeting.
And so do I assume then that the finance staff are not on to take that funding now from the COVID reserve?
Morgan?
Through the chair to the counselor, that's a great question. I don't know where the finance staff are at with respect to that, but perhaps when this report gets ratified at Audit, Finance and Administration, we could potentially have the finance staff present to have that conversation.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
So, Councillor Ferguson, just on that point, would you like to move a motion at some point in this meeting that the staff look at matching dollars from the COVID reserve fund?
Probably the easiest way is I'm on past chair and I'm on the AFNA. I can ask that question at that level because Mike and Brian will be there, and that might be at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Councillor Vanderbeek, and then we go to Councillor Jackson. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you two, and I don't know whether it's Mimi or Morgan, but the question I have is about the transition policy for applicants who have run, and I'm thinking of applicants who've run long-term events or festivals or whatever, who have or may have the need to scale down or cancel an event this year, given the timing of the lifting of restrictions and regulations by the provincial government relative to the timing of their event, perhaps, or perhaps for some other reason tied to, that could be tied to impacts, residual impacts of COVID and the ability to run their event the way that they ran it, let's say in 2019. So my understanding is, and so I'd like clarity, my understanding is that that was brought forward for 2020 and 2021 festivals that were impacted. But I'm now talking about 2022 festivals that may, or events that may be impacted. I'm just wondering how we are protecting the integrity of their long-term event to continue to be viable through the community enrichment grant process in a way that was similar to what we have done in the last couple of years. Do we have that sort of thing in place? What I heard from you sounded like we don't, and that now we're transitioning into treating all of our grants as if they are out of COVID and can obviously, be expected to run the way they did in 2019, for instance. I'm just worried about next year.
Okay, thank you, Mimi.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. That's a great question. COVID has left a lot of uncertainty. And yes, the term transitionary year, that's why we're recommending this year be one-time funding. As we can see in the past 2 years, and I think that would go for this year as well, we've seen applicants receive funds and actually take funds, come back through the phased approach and say that nothing has changed, then take in the funds and then realize that they either don't need as much of the funds, or that their event canceled and they return the funds. So I see that happening similarly this year. If it's modified down and they don't require the full grant amount at that time, then they would be requesting less amount than what's approved, or they're returning funds, because one of our stipulations within the grant mandate, since it's a grant, is we say that the funds have to be used in the manner in which they originally specify. Having said that, along with the phased approach the past 2 years, we found even when they're returning funds, so they said that there's no change, but then after the fact, because of COVID, things have changed, which we completely understand through no fault of their own because of COVID. They submit another form along with that, which states how it's been modified down, not changed completely, but modified so it's still in line with their initial application, and staff can do their due diligence to see how the money was utilized. So that's one way that they would utilize the funds, or if there's modifications after the fact in this transitionary period.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, what does that do to the following year application? Does it impact the following year application at all?
Mimi?
They transition if they modify or if they don't use it?
Through you, Chair, since it's one-time funding, we're treating this as one-time funding. So for next year, again, like every year as an annual grant program, we really have to see how many applications are coming through, what's happening every year. Like in this year, we're going back to 2019 levels. We don't know what's going to happen next year. So at that time, we would look at that, but have this discussion in mind and understand, take all this into a consideration when we're developing a funding rationale for next year as well. Our goal is not to make sure nobody feels penalized in the community, especially our returning applicants, especially with COVID and everything going on.
Thank you, Mimi.
Councillor?
Through you, Madam Chair. Would it be helpful for staff if we were to put forward a motion saying that any of the successful applicants in 2022 who are impacted by COVID in 2022, that their funding be similar to what we're doing this year, and be their base rate to be considered at the 2019 rate again? Would that be helpful?
I'm going to defer to Monique through the chair.
Sure. Monique, did you hear that, or would you like the question repeated?
I heard it. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair to the Councillor, because we don't know the level of applications to be received next year, and we don't know the amount of applicants that will be affected by COVID this year. It's difficult to say what our funding rationale will be for next year, but certainly the motion would be considered if that's your desire.
Well, thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, I'm just looking to protect our applicants who, in good faith, put forward applications in 2021 and 22, who are not able to run their event or their program because of COVID, and not have them in a position where their program or a festival or whatever it is they're doing would be negatively impacted in 2023, when we all hope that COVID is behind us and that things are back to normal. And I'm just trying to protect them if there's a way to do that. So I'm open to suggestions about how that might be done, but it would be my wish to put forward some kind of a motion that would carry this transition period, carry forward what we did in 20 and 21 for those successful applicants in 2022 who find themselves in a position of not being able to run their event in the way that they traditionally have run it, and having to return money or all of it or some of it, and find themselves in a position in 2023 of COVID being behind us, more applications coming in because more events can be run and people are anxious to get the funding to support those events, and then somehow they are negatively impacted. I want to make sure that does not happen.
So if you look at the next report that's coming up, it's funding recommendations, and it's talking about extensions for deadlines and things like that. How about, and I'll leave this up to you, I'll give you some time to put together some wording. You might want to bounce it back and forth with Monique and Mimi, just to ensure that the wording is succinct. And we can go from there, or we can do what Councillor Ferguson said and wait until audit and finance when you've got everything all wrapped up in a bow. So I'll leave that up to you. I'll come back to you at the end of the meeting. Oh, sorry, Stephanie, you're waving.
Sorry, if she, through you, Madam Chair, if it is going to be done today, sorry, I'm hearing myself twice there. If it is going to be done today, it should be done under motions, or it can be done at AFNA, because we're still in discussion on the presentation, so motions.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No, it stems from a question that was asked by the member, so we'll put it in the right slot. And I'll come back to you, Councillor Vanderbeek, at the end of the meeting. You can decide whether to put it under our motions today, or if you want to defer it to audit and finance. I'll leave that up to you. So that'll give you some time to think about that.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
All right, Councillor Jackson, it's your turn.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, and I want to applaud Director Stahl and Coordinator John. for their presentation. And what I'm detecting is a spirit of hope of especially what Coordinator John, in answering some of my colleagues' questions, I'm very much encouraged by the spirit of hope that staff are giving in terms of what these organizations have been through the last 2 years, and some thoughtfulness and sensitivity as we're trying to return as much as possible this year to normalcy. And if I might, Chair Johnson, one of the longtime members of Director Stahl's and Coordinator John's team, she was formerly manager, now with the title Special Policy Analyst. I just want to give a shout out to Carmen Bien, who's done amazing work over a number of years, especially in the area of community services and all those great agencies that provide care and support, especially to those that are desperately in need. So I just have a few questions, Chair Johnson, just for clarification, please. So I'm glad that the 500,000 from the minutes I raised, I knew staff would be ahead of me, and they were onto it. So I'm not clear, though. These last 4 months, staff in their best efforts haven't been able to find matching funds. And Business Administrator Garwood said we've got 1.354 million in reserves, but taken away the 500,000. So if we're not finding matching funds, can I presume the 500,000 will go back into the regular reserve, and we will have 1.354 million going into this year? Through you, Chair Johnson.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Morgan.
Through the chair to the councillor, I think you could perhaps presume that, but I think we're hopeful that we'll find another 500,000 somewhere else, because there are organizations that have shouldered this through the pandemic that in some cases are ineligible for CEF, or they're doing work outside of kind of standard granting processes with the city. And that 500,000, I know in our conversation with GM Mater, was identified for some of those social service agencies or organizations that were really doing that frontline work and providing a service essentially on behalf of the city. So our hope, and my fingers are crossed, Councillor Jackson, is that we can find 500,000 somewhere else, whether it be internally or externally. And I think, as Councillor Ferguson has identified, having those folks from finance present at AFNA, perhaps we can really have that dialogue. So the long answer to the short question is, if we can't find that 500,000 matching, I assume it will go back in the reserve. However, my hope is that we can find that, because I think there is a deep community need, and I would like our council in our city to be able to provide that, should we be able to find the matching funds.
So Director Stahl, you have a cheerleader here. Best wishes. I just wanted to make sure that after 4 months of not being successful yet, but best wishes in the near future that you do. But if not, hypothetically, I wanted to be on the record that that 500,000 then would go back to give us 1.3 million, and you've indicated that would be the case. So thank you, and again, best wishes. Chair Johnson, can I get more clear, maybe through you to Coordinator John, the new grading system, the ABCD. So looking through, I try to look through almost all the applications. Obviously, we all bring our affiliations, best interests, the ones we've advocated for many times over the years, to the fore, to the table. Can I presume then A, B, and C's qualified then for granting this year, through you, Chair Johnson?
Thank
for
you.
recommended
Mimi?
grants?
Mimi?
Through the chair, yes, categories A, B, and C are where funds are recommended.
Okay, thank you, Coordinator. I think I saw the odd D and Q. One of it was, I believe, under the fabulous Ottawa Street event in the past with the food trucks and that, but I think it said a D and Q did not qualify. Could you explain what those are through you, Chair Johnson, please?
Generally speaking, thank you. Mimi?
I'm going, through you, Chair, I'm going to.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got specific. Sorry, Chair Johnson, I should have asked theoretically, if there is a DNQ, what is a DNQ? My apologies, I didn't mean to get specific, sorry.
Thank you. That's better.
Thank you. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. DNQs did not qualify, and that's if there is something in the application which doesn't qualify them. They applied and it didn't go, they applied not in accordance with the guidelines, or there is, blatantly that it didn't apply within the guidelines, so it would be DNQ'd. And it takes, I must say, for the public listening in, it's under careful consideration and discussion before that is made, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Coordinator
Counselor?
John, for the theoretical answer back to my theoretical question. Thank you very much. And lastly, Chair Johnson, for what it's worth to Director Stahl, I'm supportive of your new, more simplistic, if you will, grading system of the A, B, C, and D. I think the messaging will be clearer and hopefully less contentious. And now I look forward to the report when we get to it. Thanks, Chair Johnson.
Thank you. And I don't see any further speakers, so it has been moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Nian. I'm sorry, I don't see Councillor Nian on the, so I'm going to have Councillor Vanderbeek, please, to receive the presentation. Please vote accordingly. So before we continue, did Councillor Nan get bumped off again? I understand that her internet's been acting up.
She has voted, through Madam Deputy Mayor, she has
There we
voted.
go. I see her back on again. I think I just, yes.
Carries 5-0.
Thank you. So I would like to put the report on the floor first before we continue. So it's been moved by Councillor Jackson and seconded by Councillor Nan. If you're there, Councillor Nan, I'm hoping. I see you're on the line. So it is on the floor. So this is Appendix A, folks. This is for the report GRA 22002. If you'll notice, it's a 20-page report. The first and the second pages are summaries of each department. I'm going to suggest we jump right into page 3, which now starts with the organizations by name. So if you could please go to page 3. This is by name. The top is Neighbor to Neighbor, Food Bank. If you need some assistance, reference number is CS-A1. So we are now looking at page 3. Are there any questions, comments about page 3? And just wave. Okay, thank you, Councillor Jackson.
So, Chair Johnson, can I humbly, respectfully ask, before we get to your page, back to the recommended page, I just have some concerns under the D and E categories that are approvals, but subject to. Can I get some answers, please?
Oh, absolutely. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Jackson, go ahead with your formal question and we'll hit up the staff now.
Thanks for your indulgence, Chair Johnson.
No, actually it helps to provide context, so that's good.
So under D, the grants for these following organizations be approved, but funding be withheld pending the full settlement of such arrears. I mean, it's public here. I'm looking at some great organizations like Hamilton Folks Arts Heritage Council, 41,000 approximately. Hamilton Santa Claus Parade, 32,000 approximately. And I look later on to the funding allocation that's recommended for approval. Literally that amount for this year, if committee and council approve what's recommended, is literally going to go towards paying the arrears. And I could see these two organizations, by the way, they're not the only two, there's about 5-6 others with smaller amounts, are literally going to wipe out their 2022 because they got to put it to arrears. Since it's public here, and I'm not trying to get into privacy details of the organizations, but can staff give me some indication as to, I see this as creating an ongoing hardship that, if not dealt with this year, will carry over into next year, or I hope not, may cause the organizations to have different options and plans that would be unfavorable for our community. Through you, Chair Johnson, if I can get some answers there, please.
And this is specific to D recommendation. This is all the ones that are in arrears. Thank you.
Yes,
So
yep.
is it, yep, thank you, Monique or Mimi, please.
Can you tell me what page you're on?
Yeah, actually, this is the front of the report itself, GRA 22002. And this is a recommendation from the staff, and it's under D. We have a list of organizations, and it is about 8 organizations that are in arrears. And this is the ones that are hoping, the staff are recommending that they be approved and funding being withheld pending the full settlement of such arrears. And that's what Councillor Jackson is asking about,
Correct.
is the arrears. So if they get money this year, it's just going to pay off the arrears. They're not going to be any further ahead. So that's
So can you tell me what page you're on?
You're on the first page of the actual report, not the appendices. So if you take a look, here's
On the summary page, page 1?
No, Councillor Ferguson, it's the staff report itself, not the summary page of item 5.1, the first page of the staff report.
Okay, thank you.
Stephanie, obviously I didn't say that right. So go ahead. Who wants to take that question, please? Is it Mimi or is it going to be Monique? No, Morgan? Okay, Mimi.
Sorry, my button was missing there for a bit. Through you, Chair, I want to specify from a staff perspective in terms of why we have it laid out. According to our process in our guidelines, council approved guidelines, we don't use grant funds to pay off debts. We understand this is a unique situation, but from a staff perspective, we can't recommend anything that's beyond what's before you. So we understand, but we've just placed it as it is right now. They are owing back funds. I can defer to Program Manager Andrea Carvello, if you want to speak to the Hamilton Santa Claus Parade and some of the others.
So to be clear, our policies say that we don't give money unless we're squared away. Go ahead, Councillor Jackson, any question?
So on that response, Coordinator John, and there's Hamilton Wentworth Soil Crop Improvement Association, Golden Horseshoe Beekeepers, and there's about 8 of them, as you said, the South Asian Heritage Association, $3,100. So I understand then the policy. Thank you for refreshing my memory on the council approved policy that the grant approved this year cannot be used to pay off arrears. But if organizations and all of these, if they're lucky enough to have an executive director, fine, but most of these are all volunteer driven. So Folks Ark doesn't pay off the 41 grand, regardless of the amount of money they get this year. It says pending, it'll be withheld until they pay full settlement. So it doesn't matter what they get this year. They don't pay off with some other sources of funding that they may not be able to contrive and garner. They won't go ahead because we're making it conditional upon. So I just need to be clear if that's what staff are saying, then at some point in time, I think we should have hopefully another meeting shortly before these events get underway this year. Because I don't want any of these organizations, and the few that I've mentioned that I'm very close to, I don't want them in jeopardy, Chair Johnson. So if this is a hard and fast rule, even though they get their grant this year, they can't use it to pay off the arrears. They got to find some other money. And if they don't pay off the arrears, regardless if they get the grant this year, their event ain't going ahead this year. I don't want to be a part of that. I want to find a way that we can hopefully get around that.
So to be clear, they're not going to get any money this year unless they settle up first. That's part of the policy. But Mimi, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, some of these groups that you see on that list in recommendation D, this report, I mean, some of them have actually paid after the fact, and so they've cleared their debt, but the report had to go to clerks ahead of time according to our internal processes, so we're working through that as well. But yes, to what you said as well, we withhold funds till it is cleared.
Okay. I don't want to monopolize the time, Chair Johnson. If I have to go back on a second time, you'll let me know, please.
Yep. Councillor Jackson also too. I think that it's pretty the staff are absolutely open for discussion at any time to sit down with any of the counselors that want to look at specific organizations. But as Mimi said, some of these have already been cleared up before this report was written. So I think that's something we also need to do, is get a little bit of an update from that on another day. But yep, absolutely. So Councillor Jackson, if you want one more, if you want another question, go ahead.
So that would be nice to know which ones have cleared up, which is promising, but which ones haven't. I'm still worried for them. And given the fact we have $1.3 million potentially in reserves, and potentially these groups won't go ahead with their great events because we're holding tight and fast to a particular policy, and given what we've been through with COVID. On the E part, again, some potential hardship. The grants of about 13 organizations be approved, but pending extra information be submitted. So I guess I should ask Coordinator John to begin with, have some of the 13 already provided some of the information, the extra information that was needed? Through you, Chair Johnson.
Mimi?
Through you, Chair. That would, I don't believe so. They would go to the PMs who work with them, and normally that kind of information comes in after the sub-grants committee, and after ratification, they work through it.
Okay. Again, there's ones on here like Flamborough, Santa Claus Parade, Stony Creek BIA, Pride Hamilton. So again, all of these are worthy in their own right. And again, I'm reading a hard and fast rule. Yes, we'll approve it, but subject to, if they don't provide the additional information. And I don't know the width and breadth of an extension of what staff are looking for, and staff are professionally doing the best job that they're assigned to do, Chair Johnson. But again, so many of these groups are volunteer driven. They don't have high price paid accountants, managers, executive directors. So I just need to know, and I hope this won't be our last meeting. I don't want to get into the summer and some of these groups start calling and emailing us because their event can't go ahead because staff have said, sorry, you either haven't paid up arrears or you haven't given enough information. I'm just doing my best to be protective as much as I can, Chair Johnson. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Any other comments before we go into the report, please? Into the appendices?
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, I just have one quick question now. You're asking staff to report back before the summer, which is next month. So I don't believe staff are going to have the information in time for next month, because this is a process that it's actually been the same for years, where if additional information is required, they do have to report back.
Okay, that's right.
But it takes a good month or 2 months, I believe, for people to start reporting back, because they don't get notification until after it's ratified by council. And this is the same process we've had for years. So I don't think you're really going to hit the summer months.
Can I just make a suggestion, Councillor Jackson? You and I will work with staff on this, even if it's on the side, because the report's sitting here saying that if they do this, they do get their money. So we're not holding anything back as long as we can work with the organization. So, Councillor Jackson, I'm going to volunteer you and I know that the staff are on board already, that we will work with them and get some of these guys off the list.
Chair Johnson, I really appreciate that, Olive Branch, and of course I'll be available for you, absolutely. Just through you to Elsie Paparella. Back to D. Folk Arts Festival, to my knowledge, is usually on Canada Day at Gage Park. So my worry, Elsie Paparella, based on what you've responded with, if we're not going to meet again, they don't pay their arrears, there's no Folk Arts Festival going on, because July 1st is soon coming upon us. Anyways, thank you, Chair Johnson. That's my questions for now. Thank you.
We'll get that done.
That's not actually what I was saying. No, that's not what I was saying, Councillor Jackson, but that's okay.
So, folks, again, let's go
If
back.
I may.
Yes, sorry, go ahead, Morgan.
Sorry, I just wanted to add a bit more context through the chair to the councillor. All of the staff that are present today are aware of the folks who were in arrears, who have since made up that balance. So I would implore the program managers who are on this call and Monique, if this is the appropriate time, to let members of council know who on that arrears list has been paid up, because there have been folks since between the clerk's reporting process and today, that they have settled that debt with the city. I would also like to add that these are taxpayer dollars, and we want to ensure that they are being adequately and equitably and fairly distributed. And so the folks that are still in arrears, if it is the will of council to take this year's funds to pay those debts, then perhaps that comes forward in the form of a motion rather than us not abiding by the current guidelines and policies. Essentially, staff wanted to ensure that we outlined who was in arrears so that members of council are aware that those organizations are owing to the city, if that makes sense. But I would ask those who are on the call who know, whether it be program managers or Monique Garwood, who have settled those debts so that we can ensure that this council is aware of those who are no longer in arrears.
Okay, so unless somebody has that list ready-made right now, if not, Monica, if you got that list ready right now, and I see Andrea's got her hand waving. If you have that list right now, fine. If not, I'm prepared to address this at the end. So go ahead, Monique.
Thank you. So based on receipts that or deposits that have been made to our customer service area, for recommendation D, item 1, so AGRA A4, Golden Horseshoe Beekeepers Association has paid. And recommendation D, item 2, AGRA A5, Hamilton Wentworth 4-H Association has paid. Those were the list. Those are the ones I have.
Thank you. And I've got Andrea waving and I've got Tyson. Andrea, hang on a second. I got to do this properly, by the way. So, Andrea, sorry. For arts, and so we have Andrea Caravello. I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong.
Good morning. Good morning, Andrea Carvalho from Tourism and Culture with Planning and Economic Development. So I do look after the arts and communities, culture and heritage sections. And so just to provide an update through the chair to you, Councillor Jackson, I have received the repayment from the South Asian Heritage Association, still to be delivered to finance. And in terms of the additional information for the other footnoted recommendations, I've been in contact with each of the organizations, and I'm happy to share that some of the organizations have provided that required additional information. So I have contacted Stephanie from the Flamborough Santa Claus Parade. That is complete. She successfully submitted the information, as well as Doug from the Hamilton Santa Claus Parade. So those holds related to that additional information has been received and can be released. And just to add a third successful submission of additional information, the Hamilton Waterfront Trust.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Johnson, thank you, Andrea. We're, at least with a few, we're inching in the right direction, and I'm going to stay hopeful. And again, Elsie Paparella, my sincere apologies if I misinterpreted and misunderstood what you were trying to inform me about. Thank you, Chair Johnson.
Councillor Jackson, we still have Tyson McMahon, who's in charge of the agricultural. And so Tyson, if you want to chime in now, please.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair to the councillor, I can confirm that also for the Hamilton Wentworth Soil and Crop Improvement Association, we received a check last week. So all three of the agricultural programs that are noted under subsection D have provided, either we've received a check or a check has been deposited.
Thank you. Well, that's good news. We've got it down to, I think, 4 or 5 now. So from 8. Actually, 1, 2, 3. We have it down to 3.
It's down to 3 then. Folk Arts, Festitalia, and Hamilton Santa Claus Parade. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, for all that information.
Worries. It's good for the public record as well, sir. So can I now direct your attention, please, to Appendix A. This is page 3. Page 1 and 2 is summaries of each department. We're going to skip over that right now because those numbers may change depending. So let's go to page 3, please. Are there any comments or questions about any of the funding allocations for page 3? Waving away is good enough for me. Seeing nobody. Can I direct you now to page 4? The start at is the Living Rock Ministries, CSC 6. Anything on page 4 anybody would like to question or anybody would like to comment? They're all wonderful organizations, so I think we can just say that openly. Okay, page 5 starts off with CSE 15. Are there any questions or concerns about any of these? I'm going too fast, wave. Okay, I'm going over to page 6, please. The top reference number is CSH3. Not seeing anybody waving frantically. If I'm screwing up the page numbers, sorry, I'm losing my page numbers here. I think this is page 7 or page 6. Oh, thank you. Page 6. 7. Thank you. We should play charades, Narinder. This is wonderful.
Thanks, Chair. Fun between a chair and a vice chair. Charades. On page 7, thank you through you, there is a group of organizations that applied that had lower grades, but I guess my concern is that they all represent refugee associations or ethnic communities that are providing housing or community support services, ranging from the Afghani community, the Somalian community, the Guyanese community, and Colombian community, where Hamilton continues to have folks fleeing situations from those home countries to find new home in Hamilton. And I'm just, from that earlier perspective that I mentioned in the in response to staff presentation, one of all my colleagues here know one of the things that I've been very committed to while serving as counselor and in my work in the community is helping build the capacity of these organizations that provide the frontline support to individuals who are in very dire, hard-pressed situations. And I know often it's these ethnic, cultural, and refugee-specific organizations that are providing that frontline support, which is very relational and very culturally appropriate. So if I could, through staff, just get a sense of overall and specific to those that have been graded lower, in the community services grants, how much are we allocating towards refugee supports, and specific to those that have been unfortunately unsuccessful here?
Thank you, Carmen. I see that you're online. It will be good to see your face for the first time in a long time. Is Carmen there? Oh, there you are.
Yes, I am. Yes. And I just want to do a volume check.
Yep,
Because I have audio issues. Okay, thank you. So in terms of specifically to these applicants here, Councillor, through the chair to the councillor, are you referring to the applicants that scored in the D range at the bottom of the emerging needs? Yeah, and I think that if we reflect back on what Mimi was sort of talking about at the beginning, and that we're more than happy to work with any of the organizations that contact us. And I think that Director Stahl, Morgan Stahl, talked about the conundrum we had in September. So most of these organizations that are on the list, unfortunately, staff were unaware that they had actually applied until the submissions closed. So there was a limited opportunity there was no ability to work with them in advance. And when the applications closed, we haven't developed yet a process about how we deal with that. And I think what Mimi was trying to get at is we want to flip things a bit. So, yeah, right. And so with these organizations here that are did not score as well, we're committed as staff to contacting each one of them and working with them, telling them, showing them where it was that they fell short. A lot of times it was really just around lack of depth of information. There was clarity about perhaps what they wanted to do, but perhaps not as much depth that reflects the adjudication scoring tool. So it's really having the opportunity to sit with the applicant and say, we understand your intent, but our adjudicators are looking at your application and what they're wanting to see, we didn't see this round on your application. And so what can we do to help you make sure that you hit all the points that the adjudicators are looking for? So unfortunately, it's kind of backward casting now, right? We're at the point where, unfortunately here, but we're as staff, we're more than willing to work with any of the organizations that would like to sit down and go through their application in more detail, so they're better prepared next round.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Maybe it's often the case for me lately, hearing things repeatedly before it actually sinks in. In terms of the staff not being aware certain organizations were going to apply until deadline is approached. Applications come in at the deadline, which is often the case with funding grant cycles. And it's only at that point that staff are aware that these applicants are coming forward versus being able to provide any preliminary support. I'm glad to hear that we're looking at how we might be able to build in a little bit more proactive support to those organizations, and especially if it enables us to accomplish more population outcomes as it relates to those equity-seeking communities and those organizations that do provide that frontline support. And then I also noticed there's an organization graded at B in this category, and perhaps it's the same situation with that one, but I do know that that organization, similar to many others over COVID, has had a surge of clients that they've had to support, specifically everything from food security to individuals who are, and especially younger folks that are currently dealing with a lot of body dysmorphia. And there's a rise in eating disorders that are being documented in public health and being documented through the medical system. And there's an organization that's come through, graded really high, graded in the B, but unfortunately not successful this year. So same situation there, Carmen, that they need to reach out earlier and kind of review their application and figure out what happened.
Through the chair to the counselor, I think that when we were talking about COVID and Director Stahl was talking about, a number of organizations being impacted potentially negatively, not being able to do their programs, not being able to do them the way that they would like to do them. Unfortunately, in our world, in the human field world, it's exploded. So we have a number of organizations that are going beyond their capacity and doing whatever they can to help not only during COVID, but in general. And this year is a record year for the number of new applicants we've had in emerging needs.
Yep.
And unfortunately, we, with our budget limitation, we ran out of funds. So you will see that there are applicants that are scoring well in the B zone, but unfortunately, we have run out of funds.
Thank you.
Thank you. So any other questions on page 7? Thank you very much, Carmen. Okay, we're going to page 8. Not seeing anybody jumping in. So that takes care of community services, Carmen's department. And now we're on to page 9. This is the agriculture. Are there any questions about the agriculture? This is page 9. Thank you, and that takes care of agriculture. We're now on to arts, page 10. Any questions there? Page 11, still on arts. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Vanderbeek, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question, but I have a comment. It would be extremely helpful if these pages were actually numbered.
I had to write them all at the top, so I totally agree.
So,
thank you for the suggestion.
So one of the reasons that it would be extremely helpful is because
you're right.
These books are no longer being printed for us. So I've printed pages that have things on them that I'm concerned about or that I just want to pay attention to. But as you're going through, and I'm not saying you're going too fast, I'm just saying as you're going through, I'm trying to figure out whether any of those items are on the page you're on.
Okay, so what would be helpful right now while we get over this, if I just refer to the number at the top left-hand corner, then you can follow the bouncing ball, because I was doing that earlier and I'll just continue to do that. Sorry about that.
Yes,
So
that
did
would
we
help.
miss anything so far?
in the future, I would appreciate if they could number the pages.
No, that's fine. But we can't do anything about that right now,
No.
except maybe we can make this easier as we go along.
If
Did
it's
I miss
helpful,
a
Madam
page?
Chairman, on the computer right at the top, it does give the page number. If
I
you're
know, but when
following
you
the
print
computer
it
screen.
off, Counselor, when you print it off, the
No, I'm
numbers
just,
don't come up.
I
Not on this
understand that.
page.
I'm just trying to be helpful that if you follow it on the computer screen, it does give page numbers.
Yes.
No, I agree, but I'm not. I'm only doing this so I can get through this and I can look right at you. Otherwise, I've got my head turned. So, Counselor, did we miss any pages that you know of right now? We've gone through agriculture, we've done community services, and we've done the arts. We're into arts right now.
Yes, thank you. I am on the page on the screen, so
Okay,
I'm okay
page
with that.
11. Okay.
Yes, and no, I have, although I have a couple things highlighted, I don't have any questions on this particular page. My concern was about something else, so.
All right.
But thank
So
you.
we're on page 11. The reference at the top left-hand corner is art-A29. Any questions about that particular page? No? We're on page 12, art D12. That's the top left-hand corner. Oh, Councillor Vanderbeek.
Well, you're going to love me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I do have a question 2 pages back. The
So
page
we're
we
talking
were on,
page 10.
You're going back to page 9, I think. It's the first thing on it is the very first. Art A1 is at the top of the page.
Okay. Is it art A1?
Had some things highlighted, but so
Okay.
my concern is A4, which is the Dundas Pipes and Drums Band.
Right.
So in 2019, they were allocated $3,860. And I see that they've requested $3,042, and that's what we've given them. And I guess that's why I didn't have it circled. I was going to ask why it was reduced by $800 because I do see
have to
some
ask
reductions
them.
further. But I'm okay with that. Thank you. I'm sorry about that interruption.
You'll have to ask them.
I'll do that.
So we're on to page 12, correct? As is art D12. Are there any questions before we wrap up the arts? Okay, no questions. Arts are finished. Thank you very much to Andrea and Deidre, I believe. So now we're on to page 13, and this is environment, and it's ENV-A1. Are there any questions about environment, page 13? Councillor Vanderbeek. You're muted, ma'am.
I'm having a dandy day, aren't I?
You should have had that down pat by now. Go ahead.
Yes, exactly. So on this page I'm just checking to make sure that I didn't do the same thing.
Okay, that's fine.
So in 2000 they've done the same thing. Never mind. Never mind. I'm fine.
Right.
Thank you.
They throw you off when they ask for less.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so everybody mute themselves. We're now on to communities, culture, and heritage. The top left-hand corner, it's CCH A1. This is page 14. Councillor Jackson.
So, Chair Johnson, staying with one of the themes one of the groups I've identified, the Hamilton Folk Arts Heritage Council, CCH.
What number? Oh,
CCH A12. A12.
Yep.
Halfway down. Can staff explain to me why they're recommending a reduced amount from the 2019 allocation of $4,600, please? Whoever would
That's
have
what they asked
courage of
for.
that.
If you look at requested, look at the funding request. They're getting what they requested.
Okay,
See, they're throwing us off, aren't they?
My apologies. Thank you for clarifying that. And again, that's one of the groups, of course, that we identified in the D section. Okay, that's fine. Thanks so much. Appreciate that.
Right. All 3 reductions are because that's what the organizations have asked for. Councillor Ferguson, you're next.
Yeah, just a general question. I noticed that it seems to be hit and miss on the BIAs that get funding from the Intercity Enrichment Fund. We have 12 BIAs. A number of them are here, but some aren't. Is that because the ones that aren't haven't requested any funding?
If they're not on the list, they didn't request. That's helpful.
So it's not a consistent grant for BIAs. It's only if the BIA requests.
Well, your consistency is if they request, they go through the same process as the other BIAs.
I understand that part. So it's not an automatic thing with BIAs that they all get a specific amount. And when it'll help because Ancaster's not here. I'm being parochial, obviously. And so do they have to put forward a specific program that they request funding for? Or is it just a general fund to help them run the BIA?
So I'm going to go back to Andrea, and Andrea might be able to have some insight on this. But it's my understanding is if they don't request funds for anything, then they don't hand it out to them. Go ahead, Andrea. You're up, please.
Hi there.
There's your face.
Thanks. I just swiveled around the desk. Good morning again. Hello. Through the chair to Councillor. The funds through the Communities, Culture and Heritage does not provide funding towards the operations of BIA, but every BIA is welcome to apply to support a program that fits within the Communities, Culture and Heritage stream. So it represents community in some way, celebrates the area. And of course, they're welcome to apply to any program that fits within our stream that's specific to their BIA, their community.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you for that. And I'll have a BIA meeting Monday tonight, so I'll take that up with them. But it's something like they do a July 1st event in front of the old town hall every year. Is that something that would be eligible? I don't want to take everybody's time here, but just as a guide.
Yeah, through the chair, yes, we do fund a number of July 1st celebrations. So that would be eligible. In general, of course, we'd have to look at the specifics of that program. But in general, it seems to fit. And we do fund other July 1st celebrations.
Thanks very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So that's page 14. On to page 15, top left-hand corner, it's CCH-A22. If there's nobody questioning, I would like to turn the chair over to Councillor Nan. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Nan, go ahead, and then I'll get you to take the chair.
Sounds good. It was actually on, I believe 14? It's 14, CCH. A5, the Barton Village BIA, and they have requested $47.50. They're receiving the same allocation as 2019. Is that the case for all BIA applicants? Is it just we're only giving them the 2019 application regardless of what their funding request is for 2022?
I believe that was generally answered earlier. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I just want confirmation as it seems to be different for some of them. Mm-hmm.
Is Mimi there? Oh, Morgan, thank you. Morgan or Mimi?
I'll take it, and then perhaps if Mimi has anything to add, she can add. Through the chair to Councillor, yes, you are correct. We are referring to the 2019 allocation unless their 2022 request was less. So in the case of some of those questions that both Councillor Jackson and Councillor Vanderbeek had, why aren't they getting the amount that they got in 2019? Well, their request for 2022 was less. So
got it. Thank you.
That clarifies.
Yeah, clearly not enough coffee this morning. Go ahead, Chair. You had a question.
Yes, I do, and it's on page 15. I've had way too much coffee, so this will be a nice compliment. So I will take this offline, but I just wanted to give the staff a heads up. Binbrook Parade Committee, yes, being parochial, rating of a B. They asked for 5,000, they got 0. And I just wanted to find out, because when I looked at the notes, and I have the notes in front of me, I didn't see any rationale for the 0. It just says what a wonderful program it is. So if somebody can, and it is being parochial, folks, sorry, only so I can go back to my constituents and let them know. So I believe it's Andrea that's under the CCH, Councillor Nan?
Sure. Go ahead, Andrea.
Hi there, through the chair. Yes, Binbrook Parade Committee did receive a rating of B. Unfortunately, the CCH funding envelope did at this just above Binbrook Parade Committee, so a 26. So the reason that they weren't allocated funds, that there just wasn't enough funds.
Okay.
Review.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to take that a little bit offline. I don't want to take up any more time, but I just wanted to get a little more clarity on that one. Thank you very much. And my second question through you to either Andrea, or so it would be Andrea again. So Andrea, we have a section for festivals, and then we have a section for events. Under events, we have the Cactus Festival and the Winona Peach Festival, but they're under events and not under festivals. Is there a criteria they have to meet? Because both of those festivals are multi-days. It's not an event in a sense, it's an entire weekend plus the Friday. So I'm just wondering what constitutes, and does it matter for their scoring? I don't want to upset any scoring because they're happy with what they're getting. But I just wanted to know, like, category-wise, this just seems confusing to me.
Sure. I'm happy to provide some clarity through the chair. So in the CCH program area, we don't have a specific stream for festivals and events. It should actually read events and established activities. So we receive applications and fund festivals, either one day, multi-day, as well as concert programming that takes over part of the year. Every established activity, whether that is a festival, a one-day event, multi-weekend program event, does come through this stream.
Okay.
Yeah, anything that's new would come under our new project stream.
Okay, thank you. And it's just it was disappointing that the Canadian warplane did not get consideration because they did not submit enough documentation. I just wanted to put that out there. It's they're such an awesome organization. So thank you, Councillor Nan. I will take the chair back. Are there any other questions for page 15? Seeing none, we're on to page 16, please. Thank you, Andrea. CCH A47 is on the top left-hand corner for page 16. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you. Page 17, there's only one, and it's the CCH C5. Go ahead, Councillor Jackson.
So, Councillor Nan, don't worry, not cutting it on your territory here, but it's all supportive. The Ottawa Street Business Improvements So Hungry 2022, only because I have enjoyed going down to that festival in the past and have had my tummies full by the time I go to all the food trucks. So through you, Chair Johnson, can somebody on staff explain to me the DNQ did not qualify? I'm reading the application here. Their returning event for this year lacked capacity building elements. And yet the last time they held it, we granted them 7892. So did they just not apply under the right category? Or help me understand that, whoever can answer that for me, Chair Johnson, through you, please.
Thank you. We're going to go to Andrea again, please.
Hi there, through the chair. Should just leave my video on. Councillor Jackson, that is correct. They received a DNQ because they applied under the incorrect stream in the past, and would have been recommended is to apply under the events and established activities stream.
Okay. So I'm not trying to be overly technical here, Andrea. So we don't even know whether they would have got an A, B, C, or D, but they applied. So did staff indicate to them, please? Can you share that, folks, we'd love to support your event again, but qualify under this category, not the one you did? I'm a little bit confused on that. Through you, Chair Johnson.
Thank you.
Yeah. Through the chair, staff was directed to move applications only when contacted by the applicant this year.
Okay, I don't want to belabor this one. I'm having a little bit of trouble with this one. If they would have been a great event to be supported, but technically, Councillor, they should have used this application form here, but they used the one over there, and they didn't call us back to say that why they didn't get the money. Okay, I'll leave that one for now. And maybe that's one, Chair Johnson, you and I, if possibly with
Right.
Councillor Nan, we could do a little follow-up with staff. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good point. So Andrea, just to let you know, your phone will be ringing off the hook soon.
No problem.
Thank you. So that's 17. We're on to 18 now. This is Sports and Active Lifestyles, SAL-A1. Any questions or comments? We have Deborah Modestly that's here to answer any questions. So that's number 18. So number 19, same, sports and active lifestyles, SAL-C8 is at the top of your page, left-hand side. Okay, and now we're on to the last page, SAL F-12, again, sports and active lifestyles. Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Chair Johnson, just for the committee's edification, SAL G1, the 91st Highlanders track and field, they did withdraw. They did get 23,000 pre-COVID, and I'm very much aware. I work closely with the group, as does Councillor Powers, and they were having to move their track from the renovations that'll be occurring soon at the First Ontario Centre Arena. They had to move their wonderful track to another location, I believe somewhere along the Port Authority area in one of those buildings. And just in light of, they usually hold it in January, early February, and obviously the COVID restrictions weren't lifted till about March sometime. So unfortunately, given the early part of the year, they normally hold the event, they lost out on 3 years. Hopefully they'll return next year. Just putting staff on notice, whoever's here on council next year, I'm sure they'll apply again for next year. Thanks, Chair Johnson.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. All righty, so folks, that is our 20 pages. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, it's something just rung in my ear that you said earlier, and I was trying to find it again, which is the Warplane Heritage. It was $142,000. Can you just give me that number again, or the page number, so I can just get it?
Give me a second, I have it written down.
I'm scanning back,
It's page 15.
15, way back there.
CCH A45.
Yeah. So explain to me again, they were at 100, their 2022 funding request was $140,000. And, but the recommendation is nothing. And it is a fantastic facility, known across the country, if not internationally, this organization. Why was their funding recommended at zero again?
Because they didn't submit enough documentation for it.
Is Dave Rourke still there? I haven't heard from him recently, Brenda.
Yeah, he's still there.
You don't sound overly concerned about it. I know it's in your ward.
No, it wasn't. No, sorry, my apologies. I was distracted there.
So, they're going to get nothing this year. Then is that the recommendation? That's what I'm reading. The recommendation
is that they did not submit enough documentation, and therefore their recommendation was they didn't qualify. Well, not didn't qualify, is that they didn't fulfill their obligations to fill out everything.
Okay, I'm
we can
surprised.
Go back with them.
I'm sorry?
I said I am going back with them.
Okay. I just want to make sure we didn't let that go. I'm surprised Dave hadn't called me. Maybe he's called you.
No, it's and it's for an event. It's not for the actual museum's operation or anything. It's for an actual event for their 50th anniversary.
And it's their 50th anniversary in 2022?
My understanding is yes.
And is it an air show?
It's a combination of a few things. Yeah.
Okay, well, you're the ward councillor. I'll leave it with you. I'm glad you're going to take a look at it because I just know what a great organization they are. So I'll leave it with you.
Yep. Thank you. So there's our 20 pages. I'm going to refer you now back to the actual staff report. This is the GRA 22002. You have recommendations A, B, C, D, and E that we are looking for approval. And it was already moved by Councillor Jackson, I believe. I'm going to go back to, and then seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek to have it put on the floor. If there's no questions or comments now, then we can vote. Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
So Chair Johnson, again, just to reaffirm, I really appreciate again your olive branch on the 3 organizations under D that have not submitted the check in arrears. You and I can meet with staff. I'm familiar with each of those organizations and the volunteers involved. And there's just no way I want to support anything that would say that Hamilton won't have a Santa Claus parade this November. So I look forward to the offline discussions with you and staff. And if it's required that something needs to be brought back with explanations to the rest of committee as to, especially with the folk arts and Hamilton Santa Claus Parade, the large amounts in arrears, to ensure those great events continue this year. I'm just putting everyone on notice. I'm not presuming any votes, but I'm just putting everyone on notice with 1.3 million in reserves, a very healthy reserve. Might just need to tap into that, but let's have the discussion offline first. Thanks, Chair Johnson. Appreciate that.
So, Councillor Jackson, can I just, another olive branch, under D, where it does say that they be approved and funding be withheld pending the full settlement of such arrears, that in fact, we can ask staff to direct the rest of that conversation to AF&A at the appropriate time. That way, if we're not having another grants committee, AF&A is meeting every 2 weeks, and this is where this committee falls under. I'm going to look to our clerk to see whether or not, so that way, my understanding is there's a few of these events are happening prior to our next grants committee. So we want to ensure that if it's possible, if there is some resolution, if there is some compromise, that we're able to take it to AF&A to get that done prior to the next grants committee, which I believe is not until September. Is that okay with you, Councillor Jackson? Maybe find some sort of way that we can get this approved ahead of time if there is a compromise on the table.
I'm open to any and all options to ensure, especially the Santa Claus Parade, is a full go. That's all. Thank you.
So, Stephanie, I'm just looking to you for a little bit of a process here.
To you, Madam Deputy, or to you, Madam Chair.
Tell me whatever you want.
I can certainly schedule another grant subcommittee. That's not an issue at all, providing that staff have the information back in time. I wasn't sure of their timing after it's approved, I believe at the end of the month, how long it would take them to get that information back if they're contacting them. But we certainly can try for a grant subcommittee first. If not, I would definitely take those 3 items to AF&A.
Does that need to be in a formal, some sort of direction for staff so that there is that assurance for this committee members that if getting a committee member or getting a committee meeting together is not going to be plausible for whatever reason, that we have that out, we can do it at AF&A?
It would be best if we could do that, and it would be for D, 4
and E.
Oh, and E as well. Okay. So the anything outstanding in D and E, yes.
So what is the process, ma'am, just to make sure that we don't lose this?
I will put that wording in. I'm just going to create a real quick vote so that it triggers my memory when I go to do this report. So I'll just put it, the wording, I'll wordsmith it, that basically if we are unable to hold a grant subcommittee in time, that anything outstanding in D and E could go to AF&A. The only thing I would ask is that staff not bring them back piecemeal, because then we could run into a process problem, because if we're bringing them one off each time, they really should be going through grants. But if staff can find out in the next 30 days or whatever it takes, I'll certainly, as soon as they know they have information, I'll certainly try to schedule grants. If not, I'll speak with Angela and we'll get things going there.
That's a wonderful plan. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Jackson, for playing along with me for a minute there. I just wanted to make sure we didn't lose that. So thank you very much. So on that amendment, Stephanie?
Yep.
You want to vote on the amendment that if in fact we can't get another grants committee meeting prior to summer, that those items will then be taken to AF&A if needed.
Correct.
Okay.
I will move that amendment as well, Chair Johnson.
And I'll second that. Okay, so if everybody's okay, no questions, can we just vote on that so that Stephanie can wordsmith this? And we have such faith in Stephanie. We know she's not going to, she's going to do a great job.
I won't forget you.
So, Morgan, you wanted to speak? That sounds really funny.
I just need Councillor Nan to vote as well, please. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, just so that I'm clear, could any member of council clarify what specifically you're looking for in terms of a report back on that information?
It's not really a report back. It's more of an update, Morgan, and Councillor Jackson and I want to work with you and Mimi and the program managers, depending on who it is, to see if we can get some sort of a resolution on the remaining 3 that are in arrears, and taking a look at who also needs to put their paperwork in. So that's really going to take some work from the councillors to work with the organizations as well, so that we can have something in place before summer, because as Councillor Jackson said, the Hamilton Folks Art is July the 1st. And if they are not going to run it this year, that's one issue. If they want to run it this year, then we're going to have to work with them very quickly to get their arrears in place. Is
Fantastic. Thank you. Yes, that's helpful.
You're just going to get
appreciate
another
it.
team working with you. That's what you're doing. Okay, folks. So now the report is in front of you. So it has been duly moved and seconded, and it is as amended, please. Bless you. Mine's not coming up, Steph.
Sorry, bear with me. It's just
Oh,
a
okay. I
little
just
bit.
didn't
There
know
you
if it was
go.
me. Okay.
No, it's slow. Well, that was the fastest vote on.
Fastest vote because everybody's waiting for you.
Carries 5-0. You're good.
Thank you, everyone. And now we're on to discussion item 6.1. This is the 2021 City Enrichment Funding Recommendations, GRA 21002A, PED 22122. This is citywide. So just to put it on the floor, I've got Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. Councillor Nan, is it okay with you if we just had a quick overview from staff so we know what this report's all about, and then I can take questions? So I believe Carrie Brooks Joyner or Morgan is here with us today to just do this. Oh, and Deidre is here as well. So if you don't mind, please just doing a quick overview. This is more on the mayor's task force. Go ahead. Good morning, Carrie. Oh,
Good.
Yeah. Good morning still.
Good morning. Yes, it's Carrie Brooks Joyner, Director of Tourism and Culture, and I'm happy to provide some context remarks. And of course, Deirdre and Andrea are both here to answer any specific questions on the details. So this report is very similar to the request that was submitted to Grant Subcommittee last year, which granted project extensions up to about 10 additional months for 14 projects that were funded on a one-time basis for the 2020 calendar year. And I'm happy to report that recommendation that Grant Subcommittee gave to these applicants was very successful, and all 14 projects were successfully completed within the extension period, and final reports have been submitted, and all program guidelines have been satisfied. As we are acutely aware, in 2021, the cultural sector continues to be affected by the pandemic, and the Mayor's Task Force, the Just Recovery report, and ongoing reports from the federal and provincial governments and sector associations have certainly provided a lot of background supporting that. So projects led by individual artists and artist collectives, which receive funding through the Creation and Presentation Funding Stream in 2021, once again are reporting project delays due to multiple reasons. They include facility closures, where they weren't able to access venues. There were provincial restrictions on group activities, and of course, lots of supply chain issues. And in some circumstances, it was the artist's or family member's health response during COVID as well, which was a factor. Now, similar to last year, program staff are recommending project extensions for projects funded on a one-time basis who have not applied for operating funding in 2022. So this request will not result in any overlapping of funding between two projects. So all the artists who are being recommended for extensions are committed to completing their projects as anticipated, except slightly delayed. The additional time allowed by the extensions, should they be granted, will allow them to continue working to complete their projects and to use the CEF funds as intended. So very similar to last year, we are looking to extend project completion dates to allow these projects to be successfully completed.
Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. And supplies are always limited, so that's also a hindrance as well. Councillor Nan, I promised you're the first one up. No question?
No, I was just indicating to move it. I'm in support of the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. So I did have you down and Councillor Vanderbeek as the seconder. Are there any other questions or concerns about 6.1? No, thank you. Please vote accordingly. Thank you, everyone. So lastly, we're at motions, and Councillor Vanderbeek, I promised you an opportunity if you wanted to have some time to think about the motion that you wanted to put together. If you want to wait until AFNA when the report comes forward, that's up to you. So I'm just going to give you that opportunity today to decide.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I'm going to wait to AFNA because I'd like to work with staff, and of course they were very busy today working along with us, going through the grants. So I'm going to put it off, and I'll work with them and come back to AFNA if I'm going to put something forward. Thank you.
It's going to be an exciting AFNA meeting coming up. Okay, so folks, we're now at the point if there's any other concerns, any other notices of motions. If not, then I'll just ask for an adjournment. So I've got Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Jackson, to adjourn the meeting. And Councillor Jackson, I would look forward to working with you soon. Okay, everybody, vote accordingly. Don't leave until you do. Thank you very much, everybody.